All right, hello and welcome to the Create and Invent podcast. I'm Jeremy Cook with our co-host our co-host Mr. Forbitz, Paul. Yeah, not Pat, but it starts with P.
No.
And we've also got a very special guest today. It's Andy Lee with Sienci Labs. So, how are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, and you guys are coming to us all the way from Waterloo, Canada, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and that's what a little bit west of Toronto. That's right.
Yeah, northwest, I would say.
Northwest. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Now, how long? Now, you guys own and operate a business that makes computer-controlled equipment, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, and your big product is the LongMill, I believe.
Yep.
And that's a CNC router, so that actually takes generally wood, I guess, or what does that do, I guess?
So I guess for all the people who don't know what a CNC machine, and I kind of assume the type of people listening to this podcast would know, but essentially it's like a 3D printer, but instead of printing layers of material, you're cutting away layers of material from a solid block of whatever you're starting with. Wood is a really common material because it's generally pretty inexpensive and accessible. But the beauty of CNC, it's pretty easy to work with. The beauty of CNC machining in general is that you can use materials you can't commonly print. So metals and wood and foams and things like that. Wood is like our primary material for the reasons I just said. But yeah, we use it for lots of different things.
Right,
Yeah.
right, for sure.
It's a subtractive process, though, not an additive process.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we're carving away. And we should probably explain the name Sienci Labs, spelled Sienci, which is cute because it sounds like CNC, right? But it's
Yeah.
It's science.
I say that like out of all the things that I've regret, that's probably the biggest thing, the name.
Oh, really?
Because it gets messed up a lot. Like people don't say it properly a lot. It's obviously a pun.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't get it until I said it out loud. I'm
Yeah.
I said to myself, let's look up this CNC Labs, and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I think it's cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I have like these new rules of naming, which is it has to have a few small number of syllables. It
Uh-huh.
has to only have one way to spell it, and something that's like generally easy to remember.
Yeah.
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 So, but I think now we've become well known enough that people recognize the name, and also the products themselves carry their own branding and name too. So it's sort of less of a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are your, well, first of all, I got to ask you before we get into all this. Now you have a company. It's last we checked, it's about 35 employees. Is that about right, or is that?
Yeah, that's about where we are now.
Okay. Now what I'm seeing, we see you in your in your workspace here, and you've actually got sound panels on the back, which is cool for, I assume generally keeping the space quiet somewhat. But I also see a little tail going by every once in a while. So what's you have a a dog employee or what? What's going
Yeah,
on here?
exactly. So, we have a pretty big office, and so we don't really know every time, the mail person comes or like delivery person comes. So they're specially employed to alert us if we have a visitor.
Oh, so how many dogs do you guys have there at the office?
Typically, we have two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what typically do dogs just, is it like a how many,
Depends,
interesting.
Depends
They
how
also-
many are out on the street that morning.
Well, they're full time here. So they walk around. They make sure people are happy and well managed. Yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of what they do.
Okay. Do they have like official titles, or are they on the documentation?
Not really.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I thought that was interesting. But
Yeah.
so sorry.
We do
sorry
like
to
our
interrupt you.
dogs. No
What's
worries,
that?
no worries. We do like our dogs. We have a dog-friendly office. We also have two guinea pigs.
Okay.
And it's a really funny story about how we got the first guinea pig, because when we were at our old office, which is probably about 6 months, actually a little more than 6 months ago, um, someone saw a guinea pig scurrying around the parking lot, and it like ran under the shipping container. So, um, over like the course of 3 days, they try to catch the guinea pig, and I think somebody caught the guinea pig, and then we brought it in, and obviously it's not a we don't have wild guinea pigs in Canada, right? So we figured this is when I was on vacation, so I got a message saying, "Hey Andy, um, can we have can we have a guinea pig CEO?" And I was like, part of me is like, okay, this is probably a joke. So then I was like, yeah, go for it. But then I came back, there was actually a guinea pig here. So yeah, there was a wild guinea pig running around in the parking lot. We've since brought it in and domesticated it. And because guinea pigs are social creatures, they don't do very well on their own. So we got it a friend.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
Yeah.
That's
From
nice.
it's very nice of you. Do you have any other pets there in the office? I mean,
I don't think so. We've had like ferrets come in at some point. I had a dog once back in the day, so we had another dog here. Yeah, people bring their pets once in a while, but it is pretty busy and loud and chaotic here, so it's not really like the best unless they're pretty well behaved.
yeah, no, I understand that. I think that's awesome. I love dogs too, so having them at the office is awesome.
For sure.
And I guess it kind of plays into your, I assume you have kind of a, culture. It came out of a kind of a college environment. You guys were out of University of Waterloo. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Chris and I, we both went to University of Waterloo. We were classmates, and we were roommates also. So that's kind of how we um, got connected, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And they had, we don't need to go over the whole thing because I know, I know they covered that in, when Andy was on the OHM podcast with Stephen Hawes, they covered such the cool stuff that University of Waterloo kind of supported like startups and stuff like that really, really heavily. And I think that's, that kind of certainly helped you guys start out, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like we were part of a lot of startup programs, and actually the reason we started the company in the first place was mostly because I had to take an elective. So I was in mechanical engineering. Both me and Chris were in mechanical engineering, so I had to take an elective. I think in second year we had to take an elective. So I took BT 300, which is a entrepreneurship course. Um, and to do that course, to do the assignments, you had to come up with a fake business essentially. Or it doesn't have to be fake. It just has to be a business you would like base your work on. So, you have to make a business model, you have to like come up with surveys and collect data and things like that, and you'd use a company to do that. And also at the time, I was interested in building machines and 3D printing, and so was Chris. And so we would make them kind of on the side in our garage. And basically the idea was, okay, we're going to work on some linear motion systems to make 3D printing and laser cutting and CNCing more affordable. And that would kind of be the business idea that I would use for the course.
Mm-hmm.
But we were building the machines, and people were interested in buying them. And obviously, I was learning about how the business structure works. And once I finished that course, I couldn't find a internship or co-op for the next following term. And so there was an option to get credit if you started your own business and you ran your business for those 4 months. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit on my butt for 4 months in the summer. Might as well do that. It sounds fun. And
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
how many years later is it now? It's what, maybe 10 years later, 7 years, 8?
It's been about 8.5. We started in July. We say, like, when I started the course, that was January 2016.
Okay.
So we set that as our starting date, essentially.
So this whole company, I mean, a medium-sized company has come from basically a fake, not a fake, but a course like, oh, I need something to do for the summer. Oh, well, we'll do this. I'll do a legitimate, fake business, and then build it into something that, very much real at this point. That's wild, man.
Yeah, isn't this like the definition of going down a rabbit hole?
Yeah, but I mean, you've stuck with it though, and I think that's amazing because like with me and Paul too, we have all kinds of ideas. We have many ideas are probably pretty good, but then at least with me, it's like well this is cool, and then you work on something else and something else. How do you feel? How are you able to have such a focus on this to be able to really just keep going in that direction and a good direction for so many years?
One of the things was that at that point in life, I hadn't really followed through with things, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys have started projects and you like take it 80% of the way, but it never like follows through. And
yeah,
at that
that's
point, I was thinking to myself, I should follow through with this. Like, I don't want to like get halfway, and I don't really have anything. Like, I didn't have a job at that point. I was still in school, and I was thought to myself, I might as well invest my time into doing this and seeing it all the way through. So
Mhm.
that mentality kind of was the point of how I guess we are at this point, and I still feel that where we are now, there's a lot for us to quote unquote follow through on. Um, back when we started, the CNC industry, on the hobbyist level, was very very sparse. There was like this one of the first exposures I had with CNCing was through the Shipoko 2.
okay.
Um, they were like very early stage starting out, and I was working at another internship co-op at that time where we would use those. Basically, we'd stick these pens onto these machines, and they would handwrite letters, and that was the company's kind of idea. It was a startup, so I that's how I got inspired to start building the machines as well, which is seeing these were the best option currently, and the scene seemed cool, and I wanted to be able to make stuff and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So yeah, I I start I this is during when I was in engineering, and I felt that if I needed to follow through on a project so that I had something to show for myself, and that was the scene seeing thing was basically the thing I was going to follow through on. But as a lot of projects do, you finish one part of it and then you realize there's a whole other scope of things. And for me, that was not just building a machine, but turning it into a business. And once we when I couldn't find that term, when I couldn't find a job, I told myself, okay, we're gonna get it to the point where we can launch a Kickstarter. So at the end of that term, we launched a Kickstarter and it raised about $60,000. So at that point, it was like, okay, now we have actual money on the table. We have actual customers that have purchased the machine, and now we have to follow through on building. I think maybe 150-ish machines or something like that, which this is just me and Chris at this point, right? So this like we are putting everything together. We're learning how to like order stuff online and talk to manufacturers and so on and so forth. So we followed through on that, and the rest of the story continues. So I think it was just an exercise of pride in a way.
yeah. No, that makes sense. It's interesting to me. I think about it. You guys did a successful Kickstarter, and you guys have built a successful business on that. And I think about myself. I've done a Kickstarter. I followed through with it to the point where I did it. I made what I wanted. I put it out there. I sold a couple hundred, but from then I've sold one or two, couple of months, and it's like I just wonder seeing that it's like maybe I should have gone all in on it like you guys, or I don't know. What do you? Because I'm sure there's all range of Kickstarter when people do something successful like me and it's just a one-off thing. You build a business out of it, or maybe it's unsuccessful. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do a terrible job. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the key things that I feel that made a difference on kind of how we ended up here is the fact that we were young and we didn't have any other responsibilities. Obviously, we have our degrees to focus on, and But otherwise, when we started, Chris and I were 18, I think, or 19. So we didn't have any responsibilities. Like we had to pay for rent, we had to pay for food, stuff like that. But otherwise, everything was open book, and uh, I think that had a big part to do with it. And we didn't have any preconceptions on how we should start a company. We didn't have any preconceptions on what our product should look like. We didn't have any preconceptions on how we should do things at all.
Right.
So we just did things as we felt made sense, and there wasn't any other influences, other responsibilities to get in the way. And even to this point, obviously it's been a long time, but our company's gotten large enough that it supports us as if we would be in a regular job too. So we're able to keep that independence the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, you have to answer to the guinea pig at this point, I guess. But you know,
Yeah, yeah. That one's a tough one.
Well, one thing I want to ask, how much, so as part of this entrepreneurship class, I mean, how much market research did you do to find out the size of the market for CNC machines?
Um,
Or were you kind of flying blind and came up with a successful product almost accidentally?
so I would say there's two things that matter. The first is not everyone is trying to start a billion-dollar company. We weren't going into this thinking to ourselves, we're going to be the next Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. We just wanted to make machines, and we like making machines. And if we were a relatively small company, it would be okay. So at some point, we saw, okay, there's this many people. There's a lot of people who do woodworking. There's a lot of people who do 3D printing. If we're just capturing a really small part of that market, we can have a viable business. We don't have to grow, grow, grow. So that was at some point we saw, okay, the market is big enough, and that's sort of how we left it. Um, the second part is that CNC at that point was very, very underdeveloped. We had, as I was saying, a couple of very early starters, but there was maybe three sort of major companies. Now we have a dozen or so. So yeah, we didn't have to worry. Well, I guess it's not so much we had to worry, but we just didn't have enough to compare against or to do research on. So a lot of the research we were doing, which was part of doing the course and part of, satiating the people that we were uh, working with, I guess, or asking the questions, was we were taking comparisons that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So for example, industrial machines, we were never planning to make machines to take over industrial manufacturing, but it's obviously a very easy comparison because one CNC machine used in industrial can cost $500,000. So if you say, hey, this machine which we sell for $800, small size of microwave, can basically make the same stuff, which it can't. Easy comparison. And also CNCing and industrial CNCing is billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's a massive, massive market, right? So, yeah. So basically, to answer your question, we did market research, but the market was so underdeveloped and ambiguous at the time. There wasn't really a clear um, direction we took with that part of our development.
yeah, makes sense. I guess one thing that I went over the podcast you guys did with OHM the other night, and one thing that I was thinking was that really stuck out is the fact that you guys initially you guys marketed this to the maker market, etc., and then you guys, it sounded like you guys almost maybe not stumbled upon, but kind of like, oh, this can be, woodworkers will really like this, and I thought that was just interesting from just a general. I don't know, just like sometimes when you're putting out a product, you think, oh, this is what I like it for. This is the people who like it, but then maybe there's a whole nother set of people that want it. I don't know. Is that
Yeah. So I guess I can tell that story on kind of how that came to be. Um, so when we first started, Chris and I, we would consider ourselves makers, um, textbook makers. We like to make stuff. We have soldering irons, and we like to go 3D printing and so on and so forth. And we also believed in the open source movement, and we believed in the rep rap movement, and those are kind of like the core fundamental aspects that we focused on. Um, and we brought that into the company, obviously, especially at the very beginning. Um, as we continued to move along, there was a couple of, I guess, things to consider. One is, one of the assumptions we had was people would want to build their own stuff, but the truth is that most people want a solution out of the box. Um, there's obviously a spectrum, and we're kind of falling into the people want to be hands-on, but things are kind of figured out for them
Right.
group. And I think at this point we still are in that segment. Um, and so that's one thing. Our products obviously require less assembly, and it's better thought out, and it's a little more simplified, I guess, in that way. And then secondarily, we had to think more about what people want to do with the machines. Um, One of the key when we first started, we built the machine. It was called the Mill One. It was a really small machine. It had a working area about 8 by 11 inches. So it was good for hobbyists, especially if they wanted to learn how the CNC machine worked. But it wasn't able to make things that were very useful.
Right.
If you were like, I want to make a sign, you're stuck with a sign that's only this big. But most of the time, you want a sign that is visible from 50 feet away or whatever. So we recognized that we had to scale up, and we also had to scale up to machines that people would find useful. And we had some competitors already that were building medium-sized machines, so we thought, okay, that format seems to work.
What do you mean by medium size? What do you consider a medium sized machine?
I would say medium size is anywhere like around a square foot, like a foot by foot working area, to all the way up to like 3 to 4 feet by 3 to 4 feet working area. That would be like a medium format in my eyes.
Okay, so like something that you could say mill out a guitar, electric guitar with or something. I guess that's kind of maybe this.
It's sort of where you need a dedicated space for it, but not like build out a shop for it.
Right.
There's no specific definition for it, but yeah, I would say that's like the medium format area.
Something reasonable to have in your garage.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you can't imagine having an 8-foot by 4-foot bed CNC machine in your garage. I mean, this is too big.
Yeah, that's too much. I mean, even for me, I mean, I had one that was 3 feet by 4 feet. I don't know, something like that, and I ended up selling it to our makerspace. But it was a good machine, but it just was, I don't know, got to the point where I just wasn't using it as much as I should, and it took up a lot of room too. So it's something you've always got to think about. So I don't know, with garage woodworkers, machinists, makers, whatever, space is at such a premium. So I guess that's something you got to think about from a who's your market standpoint, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So how big is the LongMill?
The LongMill comes in 3 sizes. It has a 12 by 30 inch working area, a 30 inch by 30 inch working area, and a 30 by 48 inch working area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess to finish the question, we are also not. We didn't have buy blocks of aluminum money, and we didn't have buy really high-end hardware to mill metals money at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So we also fall into wood is accessible, wood is cheap, wood is easy to work with. Let's go with wood. There's obviously a clear defined market for woodworking. It's a pretty easy sell. And also Ontario in our area has, I wouldn't say like a strong culture, but it is like, if you go out into the countryside, lots of mills, lots of people doing, I would say cottage course related stuff, which is a lot of woodworking. So we went to a trade show for woodworking, and things went gangbusters. So we kind of knew that was a very easy avenue into the woodworking industry, but for a specific purpose. So yeah,
And
that's how we got into it.
are most of your customers Canadians? Are they Americans? Are they are United States Americans? Are they? Where do you guys sell most of your stuff?
Right now, about 3/4 of our customers come from the U.S.
Okay.
and then I would say about 20% is Canadian, and then 5% scattered around the world, Europe,
Okay.
Australia, so on and so forth.
Wow, you guys have that's a long way. That's a long way to ship a machine.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very well-traveled machine.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
How do you is the exchange rate ever like a problem for you guys, or is that a that's something you have to think about, I guess, right?
It is for sure. I guess there's two areas that are of concern in terms of exchange rate. One would be with U.S. to Canadian, like when American customers buy, we sell in American dollars, but it's pinned to the Canadian dollar. So if the American dollar does well, then the machine is cheaper
Yeah.
for the Americans. And right now the American dollar is strong compared to the Canadian dollar, so it is good for the Americans to buy from Canada. There's also like when we buy stuff from overseas and from the US, the materials, those
Yeah.
also are sold in American dollars. So right now, about half of our materials come like within this region, and the other half come from China and the US and Taiwan
Okay.
and other countries. So we do have some currency fluctuations, but I think overall it kind of evens out because one, when it's cheaper for the Americans can buy more. And a lot of times when the American dollar is stronger, the economy is doing better in the U.S. So we get like we are impacted by the economy. We have a product that is for individuals, for hobbyists, for fun. So people buy more when they have more money to spend,
Oh yeah,
and
for sure.
all of those factors kind of line up. And secondarily, because we don't transfer from U.S. back to Canadian and then to Canadian to U.S. to buy materials, it sort of also evens out too. So
Right. Okay. That
um,
makes sense.
there
Now,
are
now, go ahead.
there are some like other factors that actually make it interesting to be a manufacturer in Canada that sells to the U.S. because we have the USMCA, for example. So there's like a lot of duty-free tax like
Sorry. The
implications.
What is USMCA? What is that
It
exactly?
stands for
It used to be NAFTA.
Oh, okay. And it's okay. Not NAFTA. It's the agreement formerly known as NAFTA. Is that accurate, Mr. Forbits?
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. So we can manufacture in Canada and we can ship things duty-free to the US. Um, and obviously things aren't cheap. Like things are expensive in both places, but we also use leverage like okay, we hold our US currency and then we convert it when it's optimal and so on and so forth. So
Well,
uh,
that's interesting. Like in your position, your background is engineering, same as your co-founder, and it seems to me like you've learned a lot about actual business since then. Do you have any background in that, or is that something you've picked up over the years, or what
I
is
have YouTube and I have experience. Yeah, no formal background in business at all.
Okay, well that's interesting. I mean, because even my understanding is you guys do a lot of just-in-time manufacturing, and just some very sophisticated manufacturing techniques, not just from a technical standpoint, but from a just overall planning standpoint. And I don't know, that's very impressive. Is that something you just kind of picked up along the way too, or because that? I mean, maybe they teach at engineering school, but I don't remember that. So
I can tell you they don't,
okay,
but I do feel that, especially when you're in the industry, it's something you just end up picking up. If you're working in a factory, if you're working in manufacturing at all, we're engineer. A lot of times we're engineering. Like I'm not talking about with my experience, but I think a lot of engineers who come
right.
work for us, they understand. Okay, if I'm in a manufacturing setting, I know we need to know how long these parts take to make. We need to do the quality control, and there's like these subsections of good manufacturing practice that always come through.
Okay, well that's an interesting that kind of that's something I was thinking about because you guys have not worked for a manufacturer, so there's no way you are directly picking that up. But I assume you're hiring people that come from that environment. They're like, hey, we do stuff this way, this way. So you guys are actually is that accurate to say? You guys hire
Uh,
people and they come in with their set of knowledge.
Absolutely, yeah. So, like you said, we did do our co-ops. We did our internships, and we've done a couple. So we do have some work experience, but it's very, very limited. And like I was saying, when we first started the company, it was just like what we thought made sense, right? Which I think for the most part, we have a pretty good sense. But yeah, like a lot, I do credit like a lot of the things that we've done, a lot of the things we've changed, a lot of the ideas and concepts that we've come up with in the philosophy of running the company have been influenced by the right type of people who are coming into our company. And obviously
Right.
we had to adapt specifically to how we do things that other companies don't generally do. At least from my observation, I don't actually know how much, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I mean that's fantastic because I mean if you never get exposed to the outside world, then you're not, you might say, oh, I just invented this awesome thing, and someone else might, well, that's used everywhere else. But if you can get to the point where you do have your own ideas, you've come up with something awesome that is awesome, and other people can kind of feed into that and say, well, yeah, but they do it this way, I do it this way, and it's come up with something awesome, which seems like what you guys have done. I seems
Well, let's just say that is the case.
all right.
I
Well,
mean, 35 employees. That's pretty impressive.
yeah,
Hmm.
And
that is pretty impressive.
comes with a lot of administrative overhead. I mean, do you find yourself like if you hired somebody to handle all kind of like the boring business aspects of things so you can focus on the engineering and stuff like that, or do you find yourself kind of having to be CEO, CFO, bookkeeper,
That's what they got
the
the
whole
guinea pig
bit?
for.
It's a kind of a complicated way things happen, I guess, or maybe not so complicated. So I should note that when I think about when we launched the AltMill, we had about 34 employees, and then we
Hmm.
just hired six more,
Oh wow.
just in the past month because the alt. So we had the LongMill, right, which is like its own product, its own ecosystem, and the AltMill is brand new, big machine, kind of different market, kind of different target audience, so on and so forth. And at this stage, the LongMill and the AltMill are very close in terms of like revenue. So
Hmm.
we just went from like LongMill and then now we have AltMill. So like
Okay.
we're in the scaling phase of okay, we have enough money to scale up almost like double the size of the company.
Wow.
We don't have to, which is good, which is like very, very good because a lot of the work and a lot of systems that we put into place can handle both machines. So we're not doubling the work, but obviously we need more manpower to handle assembly, production,
Right.
engineering, design, QA, blah 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 blah. The To get back to your question, which is okay, like in my role, how do I handle this stuff? One is one thing that we focused on a lot is retention, employee retention, and a lot of the employees here, they've been here for since we first launched the long mill. So they know the process of okay, we build a machine, what does that look like? We need to ship them out, what does that look like? They know the process. So a lot of the stuff is kind of rinse and repeat, and as we launch new products, we're kind of like a team, we know who plays which role and we do those things. There's obviously complicated parts and we bring new people in and they need to adapt to the changing situation. But one of the key parts is the retention helps with retaining the information. Um,
Right.
the second thing is the way that, like, at least in my department, the way that I hire is we when we me and Chris first started the company, we did everything: the bookkeeping, the assembly.
Hmm.
We touched the bolts that people have to put together. We assembled stuff. We did all the QA. So in a way, we kind of learned how to do everyone's job. Obviously, not to the level of what people can do now, but at least the basics. And it's been an exercise of delegation. we look at it, okay, what are we doing a lot of, and what is something that we know well enough that we can transfer this knowledge to someone else, and how can they take over? And not just that, can we hire someone that knows this well and better than us, so they can kind of take what we know and then build upon that. So it's sort of like a boom and bust, at least for me. I'm just speaking for myself, but it's a bit of a boom and bust for me because I find that I have a lot on my plate, and I'm like, okay, well, these are the things I have enough work for someone to do. Let's bring someone on that can do it, and then the plate shrinks.
Right.
So yeah, I would say every like 6 months to a year, it kind of like get a lot of stuff on the plate, and then we bring some people on, that plate shrinks, and it kind of keeps doing that as the company scales up.
Oh, that's awesome.
What's unique now, because the company's a bit larger, is that I'm not the one doing any hiring anymore. So now the managers will be like, it's kind of the same thing. Okay, company grows, company scales, we do new stuff. Their plate gets bigger. And they say, oh, I need someone else. So that's kind of, I think it's just an exercise of delegation. So people get busier, and then we kind of can scale that down.
Right. So you guys have like a manager, HR person, stuff like that you guys that can actually handle some of the more day-to-day employee type stuff at this point. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow, do you have a full-time HR person, or is that sort of a manager takes on that role?
We have a HR person. They don't do just HR because I think we're not quite to the full-time HR person situation, but they just went through like all the HR training and certification.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they did the office management before.
Oh, okay.
And then
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we usually try to take a coffee break around the middle of the podcast. I was thinking we could kind of do that, take a little break, and then when we come back, what do you think about you tell us about the AltMill, your new product, the AltMill, maybe versus LongMill? Just kind of maybe describe your products a little bit more, because we'd love to. I think people would love to hear about that.
We haven't even touched on anything technical yet, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we'll take a little break, and when we come back, Andy will give us some of the more nitty-gritty details of his awesome product. So, sound good, guys?
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right.
All
right, welcome to the coffee break. As we'll see in just a second, Paul had to actually step out. I'm going to give a shout out to our top 5 or so patrons. First of all, we've got Timothy Moran, Carl, Michael Sizer, Brian Moses, Pat Regan, and of course, Positive Waves. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot. And if you do want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/createinvent. You can give us a couple bucks or whatever you want. You can also give us a thumbs up or comment on whatever platform you're listening to or watching, and we would very much appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. We'll get you right back to your show. Welcome back to the Create and Invent podcast. It just so happens Mr. Forbitz had an emergency at the Forbit headquarters, North American headquarters, and he had to step out for a second. So, but I'm still here with Andy, the star of the show, since we love to interview awesome people. So, what I wanted to ask you about is you've got some new products, or you've got your actual products. You make CNC equipment, but it looks like LongMill. You've had that out for quite a while, was my understanding. But you've also got something now called the AltMill. So what's the LongMill first of all, and then why is the AltMill so much better? I have to assume.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of tell the story of the LongMill first, and then try segue into how the AltMill came to be. So the LongMill, or actually maybe I'll start from the Mill 1 side. So
sounds good.
I think I was talking about it earlier, but we had a machine called the Mill 1, which is a really small machine with a really small working area. And one of the main things that we came to the conclusion of, it's too small to do much useful stuff.
Right. And how big was it again?
It was about 8 by 11 inches.
8 by 11 inches. Okay. So, yeah.
So we took the same philosophy of it needs to be simple, affordable, open source, easy to put together. I'll have all the resources, built for the maker, blah, 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 blah. But let's make a bigger machine. So we kind of created a machine off of off that platform into what we called the LongMill. at that point there wasn't a lot of machines out there, but there was a couple that we saw were really popular, the X-Carve and the Shape Hoko.
Hmm.
And so we thought, okay, well, those are doing really well. Maybe we can kind of work in that scale. And it kind of worked for us because it was small enough to be manageable, but big enough to what we thought could do a lot more
And so the
projects.
long mill, what you say that? What's the general area, cutting area of it?
So when we built that machine, we had three sizes. It was the 12 by 12, the 12 by 30, and the 30 by
Okay,
30.
all right,
Right now, we're in Mark 2.5, which is, I guess, our 2.5th version. That one has a 12 by 30, a 30 by 30, and a 48 by 30 size.
okay. So decent size at this point in the 2.5 iteration
Yeah.
for the long mill you're talking about.
hmm
Okay,
And the reason we pick those sizes is because you can usually buy sheets and cut them down to fit into the machine. So like the 48 by 30, which is our most popular, you can it's basically 1/3 sheet of a 4 by 8 sheet essentially, or you can pass through a full sheet
right,
through through the underneath the X rail.
right. And this is a sheet of
Um,
plywood. Basically, you feed it in, and it cuts it out in a CNC manner, as we're talking about.
exactly. Yeah, and you'll probably find most CNC machines are built around the standardized material sizes. So there's a there's a reason for the sizing essentially. But yeah, we decided, okay, well we'll tackle that market, and then we built the long mill, and that did really well, a lot better than the mill one. And I think when we launched that, I think it was in 2018 or 2019, we did a Kickstarter that raised about $430,000, and
Not bad.
I think at that point we had made more money off that one Kickstarter than we did for the whole product of the mill one, which we had done for maybe about a year and a half, 2 years.
That's interesting. And do you think the fact that you did a Kickstarter for Mill One as well, correct? So do you think having that success behind you really said, "Oh, these people can actually do what they're talking about"? Is it you think that gave you that little push to?
I definitely do feel that it gave some credibility. Most Kickstarters, they are delayed, they don't ship, and they run into issues. And for our Mill 1 product, we shipped on time. I think we shipped some of them early actually,
Nice.
and people were pretty happy and gave lots of good feedback and review of our performance doing that first Kickstarter. And we had developed a reputation to being transparent and honest about how we're doing things, and that definitely did help. We did also get a lot of new customers in that segment, or sorry, outside of the core segment, as we were talking about more to the woodworking side.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was kind of a combination of those things.
Nice.
And I think at that point, one of the key things about the long mill was that it was using lead screws
Oh,
on all
nice.
the axes. At that point, the most popular machines, they all use belts. And from the feedback that we got from the users that were using those machines, the belts were by far the most finicky thing. Um, and so we knew, like, if we wanted to be competitive, we would have to move away from those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I guess there's a whole debate. Lead screw versus ball screws. We don't have to get into that, but so you had the long mill that this has done pretty well. It's been your bread and butter product, I guess, for the last probably 5 years or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so now you've got the alt mill. So it sounds like the long mill is a pretty good product, but what's the alt mill do for people? What's going on with that?
Right. So I guess to wrap up the long mill story, we've developed several new iterations of it, and we've utilized. At that point, we couldn't utilize the high volume manufacturing that we do now, and pretty much every single part of the long mill is customized. Even they use standardized parts. We have specifications for all of the components for quality control
Mm,
reasons and tolerance reasons. Um, and then like now we've also optimized using we've optimized the manufacturing and the performance of the components and hardware for the long mill to be pretty much as good as they possibly can within that price point and range and target market.
Yeah. And how much could I get a long mill for? What's your price for that?
The smallest I think starts at about 1500, and then the largest one's around 2000.
Okay, that's not bad.
We have exact pricing on the
Sure,
website, so
sure.
make sure to check it out. But yeah, one of the things that we felt we could go forward with is one there are some weaknesses that I feel with the long mill. One is with the V wheels. Um, they're a really affordable and reliable and simple linear motion mechanism, but they require tuning, and they also are source of a lot of the rigidity, the deflection.
Right.
And there's a couple things that happened that made the AltMill more viable. One is the ability for us to buy linear motion components at really, really high volumes so that the cost of those is much lower. Um, the other is our ability to develop and manufacture extrusions and do the QA process for them.
Oh,
That was
you're
another
making
big
your own
part.
extrusions? Your own. Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So yeah, when we first did the long mill, we were buying off the shelf extrusions. It was the angle aluminum. Yeah, and then eventually I think the minimum like kind of like amount that we would want to make of aluminum is maybe like 4,000 pounds per batch. When we were doing like 7,000 pounds per, like we were doing more than that in a month, we were like, okay, yeah, we can make our own extrusions now.
Well, you say you make your own, you design your own extrusions, and
Yes,
you're able to
yeah.
you're
So
able to throw
we
your
don't
weight
have a
around,
press
and
here.
you're able to throw your weight around enough that's like, hey, how about you do this? How about you do this for us? And they do it because you have the, enough business now, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of
Yeah, we don't have a press here, but we do the design and then we get them made.
nice? And is that made
Yeah.
in Canada, or is that China or United States, or what? How does who even makes it?
Some of it gets made in Canada, near here, and some of it gets made in China.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, so with kind of those were kind of the two main things. I I am sure like there's a pretty big price difference between linear guides ball screws compared to V wheels and blanking lead screws.
Yeah, yeah.
And because we're able to get them for a much better price and at the volumes, and we have the audience for that, we kind of jumped to that. And then secondarily, we one of the things that we need for any large machine is everything needs to be straight. The extrusions need to be straight.
Absolutely.
The frame needs to be straight. Like they need to be really, really precise, and especially because the bigger the machine gets, any like difference in the angle of the extrusions, or maybe if something's off kilter, that amplifies as the machine gets larger.
Absolutely.
So we one of the key things is we developed a lot of techniques to be able to QA check those, understand how much deflection we're getting. Sorry, how much twist was in the extrusions, and also processes to correct those things.
Really? You're able to
And
correct,
yeah,
you're able to actually bend the extrusion back into place in-house?
so the way that we do, so there's two things. One is when we do for the long mill, we have like a process to see where the bend and the twist is, and then we can like we get all these in raw sections and we cut them down.
Hmm.
So we can check on like how good the tolerances are throughout the whole rail. Um, and then for the alt mill, we knew like twisting and bending on extrusions is just a part of the reality. Like you just cannot get away from that.
Right.
Obviously, we can control some of it and we can make it more precise, but we had to surface the machine, like the surfaces for mounting the linear guides to make sure that the flatness and the perpendicularity of all the components are accurate. Um, but obviously we have an understanding of what we should expect from the extrusions, and we can kind of determine how much we need to take away and what machine surfaces we're using and so on, and the tolerances we have to make sure that everything fits together. And that knowledge obviously came from working on the long mill stuff.
Right. And do you actually guys actually mill out a part of the surface on the extrusion parts. Is that how you correct that, or is it? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I guess in terms of different, yeah, so cost is a big factor, obviously, because we didn't want to make something that was going to be the same price as everybody. Um, and we also wanted to take it a step up on what people could do with their machines. Now we have a kind of the large majority of our LongMill users are hobbyists, beginners. They're just getting started with CNCing. They do it for fun. But there's a really small subsection of like, I have 3 LongMills. I want to build a business. I'm really advanced. What's next?
Mm.
So we thought, okay, we'll have that section of customers all the way till we could kind of do something like production level, and um, we were able to kind of support the hobbyist market, but build a machine that was more industrial capable,
Right.
and the engineering goal was build the best, I guess, bang for your buck or like value per dollar machine. So we weren't so specific being like we need to stick to a budget. We're like, what's the best we can get until the diminishing returns kind of tapers off, and where's that intersection point.
Right. No, that makes sense. So the alt mill is basically a step up in quality, and basically it sounds to me like between the mill one, the long mill, and the alt mill, it's almost like it seems like to me like you kind of hop between. Well, this is I don't want to say low end, but basically this is the entry level CNC, and as you were able to your knowledge, capabilities, your how much money you're able to spend for it got better. You were able to implement the long mill, and from there, you hop up to the alt mill basically with the new, again your knowledge, your expertise, your just the money you're able to put into it. It seems like you're just able to kind of, hop up and up and up. Is that kind of what you've been doing? Is that kind of your, I guess, overall
Yeah,
philosophy?
absolutely. 100%. Yeah,
Awesome.
so I credit a lot of the development and choices made for the AltMill in the past development, and also the funding for it as well. But I should mention that the LongMill and the AltMill are for different audiences, and they're not intended to be a replacement for one.
Right. So you guys
And
are still going to support. The idea is to support both into the future. Is that kind of the idea?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
But not just that. A lot of the work that we've done with the AltMill, we feel that we're going to trickle down to the
Oh,
LongMill, and
absolutely.
vice versa. We had some things from the LongMill come up to the AltMill level too. So um, I feel that building both ecosystems together means that we can leverage advantage of both platforms too.
Right. Yeah. That certainly makes sense. No, no. I mean, thinking about this is like you guys have jumped up and jumped up and jumped up. I wonder what we're going to be seeing out of you in 20 years or something. Is it maybe it's going to be a
Rocket
rocket
ships.
ships? Yeah. No, but I mean it's fun to think about. I mean it's awesome. You guys seem like as Paul said, it seemed like you guys are doing really great stuff, and you guys are to support this. You guys are to a point where you're well, do we stay where we are personnel wise, or do we, double in size, or do we do what? Is that kind of that's kind of your seems like that's your challenge right now, right? Trying to figure out sort of your is that right?
So I guess in terms of next steps, the way that we've kind of been doing things for the last little bit is that um, we have like each of the engineers, they have different ideas for products that they want to see in the world. Sometimes it comes from their background, sometimes being involved with the community and things like that. So, for example, the Vortex, which is our fourth axis attachment for the long mill,
The
that was
rotary
a
axis is what you
yeah,
okay
the rotary
okay
axis. That was something that came out of like the engineering team because they're on the Facebook groups and saw, hey, we wanna do rotary stuff, but there's no rotary options that are accessible. Can you guys make a rotary axis? And things happen, and like with very little intervention from me, it appeared the Vortex rotary axis. And I realized that this is an important part of our culture because our engineers are involved. They care. Like when we hire our engineers, we want people who are passionate about what we're building, and a lot of times they're involved, like outside of work in these areas, and they have ideas for things that they want to build. So right now we have the CO2 laser in development, which is
Oh,
a passion project from Ikena, who developed the laser attachment for the LongMill.
nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then we have another project. We call it the Yes Happy.
Yes,
I
happy.
don't that's not the name it's gonna be, but essentially it takes a lot of stuff from the AltMill, and it's for like milling metals.
Nice.
And
That
right
that
now
would
there,
make me happy.
yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll stick with the name. Uh, but yeah, we found like right now there isn't really like a singular go-to metal milling CNC option. There's obviously a bunch of them,
Yeah,
but we can leverage like our ability to use the linear motion systems, the ball screws, the electronics and things like that, but basically take a take our alt mill and shrink it down so it's more rigid,
right.
and that can be used for mailing middles. And we have a video coming out where we basically made a solid, like, we took like a 50-pound block of aluminum and turned it into like a aluminum guitar. It was incredible,
No, that sounds
right?
awesome.
So if we can, obviously we don't need a 4 foot by 4 foot machine to make aluminum
So it's
guitars,
an
but
actual playable aluminum guitar?
yeah, I think it's over.
Wow.
I can show it to you.
Yeah, no,
It's
I see you've got a little guitar amp. Do you play guitar yourself?
it's, it's over there. You can kind of see it over there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I can see it
Yeah,
just in the background there. That looks awesome. Did you guys anodize it?
that's no. But maybe we should. But I think it looks cool,
Yeah.
like with the machining marks and stuff. But that's another guitar. That's I didn't make this guitar, but Scott made that guitar. And he's our content creator.
Right.
That was on the LongMill. So it's like like the same model, just with the pockets and stuff. Because it was a solid block of aluminum. It was so heavy. That guitar is so heavy still. Also,
Wow. Yeah, that's wild,
um,
man. That's so cool. That's one thing. You know, I had a CNC for quite a while, and I didn't. I started picking up guitar, you know, like very recently. But it's like if I now I don't have my CNC, and it's like I don't know. I still have access to one through a hackerspace, but it's like, man, maybe that could be a project at some point, you know, because it's
yeah,
I don't know. Seems like that's like the application. I mean, it's not the application, but it's certainly something people think of it when they see a medium-sized CNC. I would have to imagine.
yeah. So I guess like yeah, and also I do play a little bit of guitar. I'm not very good though. Um, so yeah, I think like the way that the company's kind of moving towards is more of like an incubator in a way of like we obviously we're building stuff for our segment,
Right.
but people can come and have ideas and work together on new projects, and we can kind of take it from start to finish.
That sounds pretty
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, then that I guess that goes back to, you know, we haven't really talked about this that much, but you guys, all your stuff is open source, correct? That's kind of your
hmm
philosophy. Is that okay?
Yeah, so that's still the case. You can find the 3D models for the long mill and all the accessories available through like we have an Onshape link, and um, we kind of update them because I'm sure you've used Onshape before at some point, but uh, like it's like GitHub,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
all the releases are there. The AltMill will probably be available at some point also once we kind of iron everything out. And also we made our own electronics, the control systems, and the software, the gSender. Those are all available too.
Yeah, that's one thing, you know, just going over the podcast, you guys, the one with OHM podcast, you guys mentioned that, and you guys, seemed like you guys have put a lot of work into it. I mean, is that still ongoing? Are you still seeing improvements on that and such?
So, yeah, so most of the electronic hardware side of things has been completed, and a lot of it is like firmware updates and tuning. Right now, there's two versions of the SLB. There's the SLB that's specific for the long mill, which has integrated drivers, so it's a plug and play directly into the machine, as you don't need to do any extra wiring. The SLB EXT is basically the SLB without integrated drivers, so you can use external
And
drivers.
just so we're clear, SLB stands for, what is that?
Su- Super longboard.
Super longboard. Okay, awesome, awesome. Um, yeah, well that's cool. The electronics on your stuff is pretty much solid at this point. That's what you're saying.
Yes, although I say with asterisks because, you know, these are just things that continue to be worked on as time goes on.
Right.
And I think even for the current SLB EXT and the new SLB EXT won't be exactly the same, but their changes are pretty minor, so we don't like specifically release too like information about it.
Okay.
Yeah, but functionally they're identical.
Nice.
But yeah, the thing about one of the reasons we went into the SLB part of things is because the processing power is much faster than the 8-bit Arduino AltMill stuff, so we can integrate a lot of new features like auto tool change and skew compensation and
Right.
jerk acceleration, like path planning, sort of related stuff. Um, and what the thing that I'm excited about is that one, it's still like very underdeveloped in that realm. I think primarily because there aren't any like large companies that invest a lot into those platforms.
And we're
Um,
talking about the electronics hardware, or you're talking about the software, just so we're clear.
Both.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So not a lot of companies build the electronics, and build them at a scale that makes them more
Mm,
accessible. And then also the software side. Obviously, software side's a big thing too. So
it's huge.
not a lot of companies dive, invest a ton into making that software and the firmware as well. So I think because we're kind of spearheading it,
Right.
that will be more rapid in terms of its growth.
And you guys, as far as your Cinder software, it's kind of you guys are kind of taking the Prusa slicer model, basically making it open source, even though stuff is tuned nicely for your equipment, but it's something people could use for any CNC router or whatever, right? Is that
Yeah, well, like technically, as long as they're running Gerbil or Gerbil HAL as a firmware, they can interface with it.
okay?
But yeah, exactly. We made it so that it's free and it's open source and people can download and use it for whatever machine they want.
Well, that's awesome. And what's the name of that your Cinder software? What is that called? Just
It's called gSender.
gSender. Oh, gSender. Okay, that's
Hmm.
easy enough to remember.
Yeah.
Um, well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Is there anything is there anything else you want to talk about before we close out the podcast? Anything you want to tell us about?
Um, I guess like check out our blog, check out our YouTube
Okay.
videos. We have lots of fun information, and I also share a lot of stuff on that if people are interested in just learning about new hardware stuff that's being worked on.
Awesome.
And we are also trying to grow the team, so if you want to reach out to us and think there's a spot here at our company, get in touch.
Well,
But
that's awesome.
that's yeah,
And
that's
where can we find your YouTube channel? It's, I guess, CNC Labs with an S. Is that
yeah, yeah,
okay? And
yeah.
same
I
thing
think you can.
with your website, SIENCI Labs.com. Is that
Yeah, it's just sienci.com.
CSO? Even better. So
Hmm.
that's awesome. Well, cool. Was there anything? I guess what's your latest project? What else are you working on? It doesn't have to be for work. Maybe it could be something you're working on at home. I don't
Um,
know.
well, I guess like for the company right now, I've been working on this panel computer thing. Actually, I have it here. It's like it's actually a POS system. Like, like if you're
Yeah, yeah,
using it for a cash register or a bar or a restaurant or something.
sure.
But I'm putting the software, the gSender software and stuff like that, so you can control machines on it.
Oh, that is awesome. So you can buy an off-the-shelf um, POS system, put your hardware, your software on that, and that can be your machine controller.
Exactly.
That's pretty
And
cool.
probably because gSender is used for, you can use it for a lot of different machines. You don't need to use this. You can use this computer for like the other machines. It doesn't have to be just for AltMill or LongMill.
Okay, so you guys are selling that computer as an all-in-one system.
Uh, like that's the plan.
Okay,
We haven't like done all of that yet, and we're still like testing the software side
right.
and the networking side of things. But that's the plan.
Okay.
That's
Well, yeah, that
what we
sounds
want
like
to
a
do.
cool application. So,
Hmm.
well, awesome. And just so we're clear. Oh, also, how much is the alt mill if we wanted to get one of those roughly?
Um, well, don't quote me on this. There's pricing on the website. I think it's about $4,000.
About 4,000. Okay, that's
Yeah.
it's about right for a high medium. Yeah, that sounds about right for a robust type of machine like that. So
Yeah. High-end hobbyist or low-end industrial, I guess, is what
right.
I would call it.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really, it's awesome to learn about your company and awesome to see how much you're growing. So so thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
I guess I'll catch you later.
Yeah, take it easy. Stop it first. That's up to you. Whatever.
All right. Andy, I'm so sorry. I just got a text message. Somebody needs me to leave immediately. We're very impressed.